and actually some people got rehired, which we're happy about, and we want people to be able to earn a living without having be subject to mandates. But you have the OSHA mandate that was consolidated in the Sixth Circuit Court of Appeals. That is not a court that is ultimately gonna rule favorably on that. I'm very confident of that. However, they recently ruled that they did not want to entertain the case on the full court. So they have a panel which may not, of 3 judges, which may not be representative of the full court. And so we'll see what happens on that. I mean, I was surprised at that. You could end up with what I would consider an adverse ruling on the panel, and then it maybe goes to the full court, and then the rule is ruled to be unconstitutional. But I'm confident of the ultimate result. How you get there, there was a little bit of a curveball, because the easiest thing I think would have been, okay, you know this is a significant thing. It affects tens of millions of people potentially. Have the full court hear it, and then and I mean, I'm assuming, you know, the Supreme Court would be asked to take it, but quite frankly, I don't think you'd get a different result from the U.S. Supreme Court than you would from the Sixth Circuit. But instead, they're doing the 3-judge panel. Who knows? They could lift the stay on this. I hope not. I'm not predicting that, but it was something that I think didn't need to necessarily go then. They typically don't like doing it on the full court initially on cases. I get it, but this is something that's very significant. So we're watching that. We're happy with our substantive protections that we've put in place, but we also feel that, you know, our case has been consolidated there, as is every other case around the country. It is an important matter of principle. Even if it's ultimately doesn't affect people in Florida, depending on how it comes, because you can't just have these bureaucracies that are running amok. I mean, this is OSHA, this is like employment and workplace, and they're imposing a vaccine mandate on statutory language that was enacted decades ago. That's a huge problem. And if they're able to do it on that, there's going to be other ways where they can weaponize the machinery of government to impose really far-reaching policies that really invade on people's individual freedoms and extend beyond the enumerated powers that have been delegated under the Constitution. So it is very important. We'll see, but people should just be prepared. It is on a 3-judge panel. You could potentially see a hiccup before we ultimately get, which I think will be a favorable decision. Okay, anybody have any questions? Okay, you can look up everyone who I've appointed. So we have however many universities, however many state colleges, and you could look to see based on their records. And it's obviously false on its face. It would require probably 20 minutes of investigation to be able to do that. So it's yet another baseless conspiracy charge that gets thrown around. And so, you know, it's obviously, you know, not true. And I will tell you this, if you look at what we've been able to do with our university system, every year that I've been governor, it's been ranked #1 in the country by U.S. News and World Report. You look at a place like University of Florida, they were like 19th in the country 10 years ago. Now, since I've become governor, they're now 5th in the country for public universities. And so that's something that we're very proud of. And so I think the vast majority of people, whether I appointed them or didn't appoint them, you know, I think have done a really good job. And so that's just the facts. So, well, first of all, I can maybe have Dr. Latipo speak to, you know, this testing and what, and you can correct me if I'm wrong, but there's no need if you're healthy to just be running out and getting tested every day. I mean, it's just, this is something, it's a tool for somebody that has clinical symptoms to be able to identify, you know, what that is. But the places that require all these testing, we talked about these universities, they're requiring it, and they end up having this stuff. So it's not going to have an impact on arresting these types of waves. And so, you know, my sense is that, you know, obviously there's been a lot of CARES Act money for both state and local. I know different local communities in Florida have approached it differently. Some of them have spent a lot of money on testing. Others have recognized that a lot of this is commercially available. So, you know, we'll leave that to those local communities to be able to make those decisions. I'll have Joe come up, but I don't think there's any evidence that mass testing of healthy people has done very much to interrupt any of these seasonal waves.
So, we have an evidence-based, rational approach to management because we anticipated that there would be, additional, at least increases and possibly surges. And we're seeing some evidence of that in other parts of the country. The science regarding Omicron is actually extremely interesting because it's the velocity with which it becomes the dominant strain is like nothing that we've seen before during this pandemic. Of course, countering that, the good news is so far there's no evidence that it's deadlier. So our approach is not actually different from what we've been doing. So we have testing sites and resources in place. We monitor the volume of positive testing. We monitor the volume of overall testing. We make some epidemiological estimates regarding projections with those data, and we encourage clinicians, hospitals, clinics to provide early treatment for high-risk patients. So that's the basis of our approach. I think, as the governor said, it's been completely ridiculous from the beginning, by the way, to go around thinking that you could contain this virus by doing with a testing strategy. And the reason, of course, and we've known this from the beginning, so guys like me were looking around wondering what my colleagues were doing. The reason is that a substantial proportion of people never have symptoms. So when you have a condition where, best estimates are probably 40% of people have no symptoms, and this is in unvaccinated people, the proportion might even be higher in vaccinated people. You can't contain it by running around with swabs trying to test people. It's not possible. It's going to spread. So managing that is our approach, and the answer about mandates in this state.
Well, first of all, I think what we should do is we should take that letter and we should forward it to Joe Biden in the White House, because things are more expensive because of his policies. What they did earlier this year, trillions of dollars. You look at all the different things that have gone on that have hurt the supply chain, fuel prices, and then when they did the CDC taking over all these rental properties, that is all contributing to what's happening. So we're happy to forward that letter on to Biden because, make no mistake about it, that is what is driving increased costs across the board. Now, in our governor's recommendations, we had, first of all, I think it's great to point out, my governor's budget was $99.7 billion. And to compare that to the state that's closest to us in population, New York State, their budget, even though they have worse roads, worse bridges, worse K-12, worse higher education, their budget's $230 billion with massive taxes and all kinds of other problems. So we have no income tax. We have the lowest per capita tax burden in the country. And at a $99.7 billion for a governor's budget, we have over $15 billion in surplus revenue, both in terms of unallocated general revenue, in terms of the budget stabilization fund, in terms of trust fund, outstanding trust fund balances. That is a huge, huge cushion to be able to have. And so we're doing that in a very strong way, protecting Florida against what may come down the pike with Biden or anybody else. But we're also doing really significant things. We're increasing teacher pay again. We're doing $1,000 bonuses for teachers and principals and cops and firefighters. We're increasing salaries for state law enforcement by 25%. We're doing $5,000 bonuses for all new law enforcement that come into the state of Florida. And in terms of affordable housing, we have full funding for the Sadowski Trust Fund in my governor's budget. And so if you look from infrastructure to environment to education to law enforcement to all these things, we've been able to do really big things in this budget, but do it in a way that has us sitting on a huge cushion in state revenue. And I think if we were all sitting here in April of 2020, there probably wouldn't be very many people that would have predicted where we'd be where we are. I think most people would think we would have been way worse off than where we are. And so this matters, and we're happy to be addressing the needs of Floridians in a very thoughtful and bold way.
Governor, your reaction to the border fraud charges
So we want no voter fraud in Florida. We think it's very important that we have a transparent, legal system of voting. And I could just tell you, I think what we've seen around the country, the safest voting is that in-person secret ballot, and you hand it over inside the voting booth and inside the precinct. The more that you have mail ballots floating around into the ether, the greater opportunity, when that leaves the elections officials, the greater opportunity you could have for potential impropriety. That's why in this year I signed a piece of legislation banning ballot harvesting in the state of Florida. I mean, the idea that political operatives should be going around collecting satchels of votes and then dumping them in some place, that is not one person, one vote. That's not a secret ballot. And that's something that I think is very problematic and has been very problematic in other states. So we don't have any tolerance for that. What we're seeking to do in this next legislative session is increase penalties for ballot harvesting, increase penalties for people who are using fraudulent identities to be able to go in and obtain a ballot. We're also going to be having ID as part of the absentee ballot request process. I think it's very important that you have to show that you actually live in Florida still. I mean, we're a transient state. You'll have people that haven't lived here, and they're going to still get a ballot. That's not the way we want to be able to do. So, and then finally, we're going to ask the legislature to enact a election integrity unit in state government. We're going to have investigators, law enforcement. If you see somebody doing something, whether it's villages, whether it's some other places, you can call this unit. You can call investigators, and this is all they're going to do. They're going to know the election code inside and out. They're going to be able to go, because I think what happens is there's different people in Florida that have seen things that look suspect, but they'll call their elections office, and the elections office is like, well, what am I supposed to? They're not investigators. I mean, they run the election. But then you can call a cop or a detective, and they have a lot of other fish to fry, so they may not be as acquainted with the election code. And some prosecutors don't like getting involved in this. So I think we have a way for this stuff for our code to be enforced in a way that makes a lot of sense, and in a way that will deter people from trying to pull a fast one. But I can tell you, we don't want to see with the massive ballot harvesting that you see in some of these other states. That is not conducive for people to have confidence in what's going on. And one of the things I was proud of in Florida in 2020 is midnight on election night. We had about 99% of the votes that had already been counted by midnight on election night. You had some of these other states, they took days, weeks, and some even took months before they were able to count all their ballots. And here's the thing, even if nothing improper is going on in those 4 or 6 week period where they're still counting, people are going to look at that and say, well, wait a minute, this candidate was ahead on election night, and then you counted for 6 weeks, and then all of a sudden the other candidate wins. Even if nothing was done wrong, there's a lot of people that are going to be scratching their heads when that happens. So we really believe doing it in a way that's transparent, where the votes are tabulated and then the results are put out on election night, inspires a lot of confidence. And so we're looking forward to having a real strong legislative session building on some of the success that we've had with ensuring the integrity of our elections, and we're going to make sure that we do it going forward. But there's no question that when ballots leave the elections office, you increase the chance that you have somebody violate the law. I mean, that's what Jimmy Carter and James Baker, they did a report about 10, 15 years ago talking about that. And so that in-person voting, whether it's election day, whether it's early voting, that really is the most secure, and I think the way that would make the most sense to have most of this stuff done. Okay, thanks everybody. We'll see you soon. Thanks guys. Merry Christmas.